Delivering this week's must-watch workplace storylines, this is Bloomberg Law's Punching In, for those of you listening in Washington and across the globe.
Hey folks, thanks for punching in with us. We are back here after the Thanksgiving holiday. Hope you and yours had a nice little family reunion and some good food, or plenty of good food, I should say. I think whatever else you can say about Thanksgiving, it's definitely true that for most people, it's our national holiday that's mostly about eating a ton, right? So I hope you got some of that done. But back to our labor news for this week. We'll start off on the Hill. Congress is back in their lame duck session to end the year. The big ticket items for us employment and labor folks to keep an eye on are a farm bill and a funding bill for parts of the federal government that weren't covered by a previous spending package from earlier this year. I should actually say it's not uncommon for Congress to be pretty quiet during lame duck, the sort of transition period here, although it's also not unheard of that pretty significant moves can be made during a lame duck session. Now, as to the farm bill, that might require some haggling or some sort of compromise. That's because the administration and many Republican lawmakers would like to implement certain work requirements on the low-income folks and workers who are eligible for food benefits like SNAP and it's a loaded term, but food stamps and other things like this from the federal government. As far as the funding bill goes, that one won't affect many labor agencies. Most of those are already funded by the previous piece of legislation, but it would fund the EEOC, which wasn't covered by that bill. So we'll see what levels the EEOC gets funded at. What happened with the other labor agencies is that the White House proposed some pretty significant cuts to each of the labor agencies in the government, and in fact, major cuts across the entire federal government. But the Republican Congress rejected most of those proposals and kept most of the majority of the labor agencies funded at the same levels, basically, that the Obama administration left in place. So we'll see what happens with the EEOC there in this funding package. One last thing to keep an eye on in the funding bill is funding for DHS, which isn't squarely a labor agency, but there's been some talk that the funding for DHS might come with some immigration-related measures, which obviously affects labor and workplace policy in the country. So we'll see what measures come up there, if any. Our next item today takes us over to the Supreme Court, which, fun fact, is actually also on the Hill, just a hop and a skip over from Congress. The Supreme Court will be conferencing this week on Friday, actually, and they'll be considering whether to take up the question, is LGBTQ discrimination a form of sex discrimination already banned under the 1964 Civil Rights Act? Now, they actually might not say whether or not they'll be deciding that question on Friday. The court typically conferences more than once before they decide to take up a case, but they could do that as soon as the first week of December, so we'll certainly keep you up on that as well. And last on our agenda for today, I want to urge folks to check out our column where Jacqueline Diaz, my colleague here, has some additional reporting on some plans the Department of Labor has for mandatory arbitration. All right, that's it for this week, folks. Thanks for punching in with us for the Labor Desk's Monday Morning Musings. For more coverage, be sure to check out our website where the Punching In column is hosted. That's news.bloomberglaw.com. And of course, you can always follow me on Twitter at Hassan Kanu. See you next week.